the left hand of the classroom, and this is going to be a journey from fumbling time to mastering time. Alright, so for the objectives, I'm going to explain to you guys what the obstacles are regarding time management and a few strategies to overcome those obstacles. Alright, so there are two types of school days currently in use. There are the non-block 42 minutes, where you meet with every class every day. Those types of scheduling are beneficial in a way because you see your students every day. So while you get a shorter period of time, you get to see them every single day for 42 minutes at a time. The block scheduling is beneficial because then you have a bigger block of time in order to see the kids, but you only see them every other day. So, and some schools utilize that kind of block scheduling, and others use a type of block scheduling where you'll have them for a semester, and then they move on to new classes for the next semester. So, again, with those benefits, you're getting more class time in, but you also have fewer days with the students. Overall, the mandated time is there. It's about 126 hours, and the book breaks it down that in that time, you're going to have available time, which is a little under 120. Then instructional time, which is you actually teaching, is going to take up that amount of time. Engaged time is the time that students are actually paying attention to you, learning what you're teaching, making it so that they're receiving your teaching. And then we have productive learning time, which is the time they're actually learning information that is new or deepening their understanding of things and concepts that they've already understood. All right, so making good use of the time you have is important. As you saw by the graph, there's not a lot. That's time for the entire year, not just time for like a week or a month or a couple months. That's all the time you have for the entire year. Administrative tasks take up time at the beginning. You have to take attendance. Some of your classes are interrupted by announcements, or administration might call you for a dismissal, or any amount of time to interrupt your lesson. So that time takes away from the overall time you have. And in order to utilize some of the examples utilized in the book are giving them a task at the beginning of class, a little write-up of what they think your lesson was last time, or utilizing some kind of board assignment in order to get them engaged in the lesson that you're going to be teaching that class period. Transition time and distractions are another thing that are utilized, that are take away from our time. Transitions like coming into class, leaving class, somebody going to the bathroom and coming back in. All these things detract from your actual teaching time. So these things you have to try to cut back on by utilizing, again, the task, like for when they come in, having a board assignment up so they can actually have something to do while you're doing some activities, or to utilize that transition time for something that's effective for their education. You have to avoid things like flip-flopping, stimulus-bounded events, and overdwelling. Overdwelling, we witnessed a little bit earlier when we kept beating a dead horse with a stick. We all understood what was going on, but at the same time, we could have moved on from that point. A stimulus-bound event is something that is specific to a certain stimulus that may or may not be lesson related, like when you're having them write an assignment. If that's not actually related to your lesson, then they're not learning anything, they're just doing something to keep them occupied. And flip-flopping is going from one thing to another, to another, to another, to another. Who can give me an example of flip-flopping? Crickets don't flip-flop very often, but they sometimes can when they're in a cage. Anybody?
For social studies, starting with the American Revolution, jumping to the Civil War, and then coming back to the Revolution.
Perfect example. So you'll go from one topic to another. You'll probably end up confusing the kids in the process because, oh man, we were talking about this, now we're over here. Are we going back to that now? So you've now taken time out of your lesson, out of their education, just because you had a sudden epiphany. Oh, we got to talk about this later on, but we'll come back to that. We're going to be over here for now. come up before, it's transitions. Transitions have to be crisp, quick. Make sure you have control of your class by setting routines, like somebody brought up earlier. If they're in the routine, then what they do is they'll come in, they'll execute the routine, and then you can get right into it. You don't have to worry about them coming in, putting their bags down, talking to their friends, you trying to get control of the classroom, and then having to start instruction from a place of discomfort for yourself. Don't over-exaggerate your transitions. Don't, be robust in the beginning and then at the end kind of, gotta get out, go away. Stay in control in the classroom from beginning to the end. You lose time having to correct people's behaviors. So if I have to walk to the back of the classroom and say, hey, stop working on your PowerPoint. That's not what we're doing right now. We're talking about chapter 8. Then, that's wasting my time to go and to correct a singular student, and it's wasting all the other students' times as well, because now I have taken time away from my instruction to go correct somebody else's behavior. So control is very, very important. If you have it from the beginning to the end and you get your routines, then you're good to go. Make sure that your activities flow together and are subsequent. So if you're teaching a lesson, since I'm a biology major, I'll use a lesson on mitosis. If I'm teaching mitosis, I need to make sure the activities, say for anaphase, flow into telophase and then flow into cytokinesis. If I give them anaphase and then we go back to prophase, my entire lesson has just been completely derailed because now the flow for them is going to get messed up. They're going to think that prophase comes after anaphase, and that's not the case. And then clarify your instructions from the beginning. Make sure you're using a clear, concise tone and voice when you're giving directions to students for their activities, and make sure that you're not, that way you take time away from them asking you questions like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing? Well, I went over it before, but I can go over it again. Obviously, if you're having subsequent flow activities, you're going to have to take a little bit of time, because if some kids are behind while others are ahead, the kids that are behind, they might not have got what you said about the instructions. So you may have to go back, but at least then it's a small group of your students, not the whole class. All right, and just a thing to remember, effective management leads to better utilized time. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. You gave me an example of students being disrupted and then having to stop your lesson and go back and not to do that, not to go over there and deal with that problem, that you need to maintain control. How do you prevent that from happening or maintain control to the point where you don't have to do that?
Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to have, if you set good routines from the very beginning, the likelihood of that occurring goes down. Because if everybody's with the routine, then they're with it. They're okay, well, we know what we're doing, we come in, we do this, then we do this, then we do that. Now, let's say an incident does happen.
Right.
You walk over to the student, as long as they're doing an activity, you have them all distracted with something else, then you're not actually taking time away from your lesson. It's a lot easier to do when they're doing an activity. If you're in the middle of a lecture and somebody's sleeping, obviously, you're going to have to take a little bit of time, walk back, gently tap the desk, make sure that they're awake. Don't draw too much attention to the fact that they're, sleeping, because then the whole class is now, teacher, he's over there, he's like, hey, wake up, come on, you gotta make it as organic as you can. If you stop everything, hey, wake up, then the whole class is now away from their activity and they're focusing on the student that was misbehaving. So just try to find a way that works for you, that's organic, that doesn't detract from everything. So again, each person's going to be different. Any other questions?
I had an art teacher who, when I took in high school, I took clay and pottery or whatever. The kid was sleeping in class and the teacher painted his nails. He was sleeping like this, so she took his hand and painted his nails pink.
Great.
I don't think you can use it, but I thought it was the most standout
an
experience.
assignment this week on ethics, and that would not fly. Although I find that hilarious, it would not fly. My son had a person that had a golf club that they would constantly swing. I guess this guy was like a wannabe really good golfer. He'd walk through social studies classes just swinging the golf club. If he fell asleep, whack at your desk with the golf club. And my son was so afraid of the golf club that, I don't think you ever, did anything to sit on the edge of a seat waiting, you know,
My teacher just slammed the tape of the desk.
There's
There's
books.
books on the table.
yeah, you can't.
One tactic that my teachers used was to slide that person's name into the lesson they were doing, so that way it caught their attention right away of, wait, what'd they just say my name for?
You
And then
can
it
call
brings
them. My favorite thing is just move over next to him and make my voice much louder, like, you know, so what I'm trying to say is, and not look at them at all, just back to them, but right next to them. And eventually that person cannot help but hear your loud, obnoxious voice right over their head.
See, these are all good examples. I have the most out there. In 6th grade in music class, whenever someone knocked on the door, like he would throw a broken flute at the wall. And he did it every time. He would go and scare the crap out of whoever knocked on the door. See,
Don't do that.
I'm giving you examples of what not to do, but
non-examples.
are hilarious.
These are all non-examples.
Exactly.
Does anybody have any other questions?
No, you did great.
No?
Okay, do his review.